My personal highlights are when Mike and I are sitting down and we are just dreaming at the beginning of a project. And we both have such fun ideas and we riff off of each other, and that's the most exciting time for me. And definitely at Gaijin Games, which we started together, that's the high point of my career as well. Like, it's the best.
Being more independent is, we can have any sort of idea we want, and we can laugh about it or come up with some wild idea and then say, hey, we're putting that in the game. That creativity and that freedom is probably the most sort of honest thing that happens at Gaijin Games.
Highlights when you've spent 4 years making a game and it's finished finally and you can actually go to bed instead of staying up all night, which are some of the lowlights of being a game developer.
You know, in all seriousness, it's like the greatest job in the world. Like, there's not, you know, I am deeply skeptical of anyone who complains about their job as a developer. However, which is not to say that there are not low points within the development process. Throwing out everybody's work after a year when it was totally, like, it was bad design, and so we threw out everyone's work for a year, that was a low point. Redoing the combat multiple times, again, throwing people's work out, that's always a low point. You know, it's one that I am not afraid to do, you know, because I'm an awful designer, but
it feels like you shouldn't be doing it, but you know it's the right decision. It's one of those things that you gotta do.
I think one of the moments that was both a highlight and a low light for me was towards the end of the project. You know, we were behind and we had a lot of things that everyone wanted to polish, and we had this mechanic where you could throw a ball and you could actually create a box from it, and it ended up becoming the blueprint area of the game. And I really, really wanted to put that in because it was practically done from a tech standpoint. Like, it was so easy and so gentle, like compared to the vines, which was a mechanic where you could grow vines. It just took us like 9 months or something of programmer angst to finally get working. This blueprint box drawing was like, you know, ready to go. And everyone just felt like, oh, we don't have enough time. Like, we've got to cut it. The rest of the game will suffer. And at the time, you know, I was envisioning this would be a whole level of the game. There would be this blueprint thing. And there were a lot of sleepless nights of just trying to figure out, like, how can we possibly do that? And then it occurred to me that we could actually just put the blueprint as a tiny little section of an existing level. And then actually, like, in terms of the story, it would make perfect sense, like, tonally. And then, you know, sort of like light, you know, went off. And then, you know, within like a week or two, like, I had a, you know, really basic version. And then it was like, oh, this could actually work, and we could save it. And the game is actually better, I think, for having, like, you know, I think it's strong that it's such a small moment that it stands out. And, you know, some people will say, like, oh man, I wish that was a whole level. And yeah, maybe it would have been better if there'd been more, but I think it's actually, like, stronger as a result of the sort of crucible, you know, under which it was created.
You know, we had been developing it for years, sort of in isolation, and very few people had seen it. And around the first E3, which I think was 2011, like, it was essentially the first time we had ever shown anybody. It was the first time press was seeing it, and I think the time leading up to that was somewhat of a dark time, because, you know, there's a lot of anxiety around, like, what is this? Is this even a thing that we're doing? Like, what is anyone gonna? I don't know. We always have problems communicating things about the game and what it is, and so there was a lot of fear and anxiety going into that E3 about whether people were gonna understand what we were trying to do and appreciate it. And I think immediately after that, you know, we went to that show and got great feedback, and I think that sort of, you know, we had a year of development after that, and sort of having that show and having that positive response really motivated us and gave us sort of like the energy we needed to sort of like crunch out the last year of the game. So I think that those two moments were really important, I think, for us.
The end period, that's clearly the hardest on the team. When you're wrapping up the game, you're sort of going in for the landing, and you have to get to ship. You have to make a lot of tough decisions, and you have to be moving fast, and it affects everyone on your team, and not just their day-to-day job, but, you know, their personal life as well. And that's never fun to go through.
That last year for us was horrible. I mean, it was a really long year. We're working crazy hours. I was also doing press at the time, so I just did not see my family very much at all. And yeah, like on weekends, everybody would come in early in the morning, and we would, like, my boss would buy me like a 6-pack of beer, which I would go through all in one day. Wow, this is getting dark, isn't it? Yeah, and then we'd always get like ribs for lunch, and then Outback Steakhouse for like Sunday would be Outback Steakhouse, Saturday would be ribs. I mean, like, I was so big. I'm not a svelte guy now, but back then I had packed it on by the end. So by the time the game ships, you've had some serious like low points you've had to go through to get to the high point of actually releasing. So
one of my favorite high moments probably, as the producer on the game, I often had a lot of people come to me and ask the question of, especially earlier in development, okay, like, we get the high concept, but what's going on? Like, when are things coming together? You know, how is this going to work? When's it going to be fun? You know, when is all, and my job is to completely trust in Jake and the design team and everyone bringing everything together, understanding their plan and having that trust that it's going to happen. Work through the problems on a one-off basis. But for, you know, more than a year, you sort of have to tell them, like, hang on, it'll come together, it will. And so when I actually, you know, when I was working overtime as well, I would often stay very late and play late into the night, just so I could be one of the first people to feel that moment of flow and like, wow, this thing is actually coming together. And as a gamer, holy shit, this is an experience I want. And I remember in post-production when we were in alpha, the first time I felt that, I stayed up till about 3 or 4 a.m. just playing through the game, and I was locked in. And it was an amazing moment.
The highlight of development is experienced it this year making Papo. And the highlight of development is when someone writes you a letter thanking you for the game that you created. That's amazing, and sharing the experience. So in Papo Yo, we get a letter right now. After 6 months, we get a letter once every 2 weeks about people thinking of helping them to cope with a terrible reality that they're living in, and that it is so rewarding. Like in all my development career experience, that's the highlight.
There are 2 points. One where the idea you've been struggling with actually starts to make sense, and then just before you go into alpha and beta, when everything starts coming together finally, and your main vision is actually coming to fruition. Those are great highlights. And the lowlights, being stuck in the same office for 24 hours day after day.
It's the running a business and figuring out how to run a business, because we're game developers and we started as game developers. We didn't start as entrepreneurs. And so the low points for me are dealing with like taxes and health insurance, which we're trying to start implementing in our company, and like all these crazy things that I don't particularly want to do because I'm not that interested, but we have to. So luckily we're doing it together, but it's insane.
Economical uncertainty of development. It is really hard to, when you're trying to innovate, when you're trying to make something new, that you actually have to struggle so much to find money, and also dealing with the real promise of a company cash flow, that you have to pay people, and then sometimes some months you don't have money to pay them, and then you have to move your money around. And then it's not that the money is not coming, it's just that the money may come here, and then, okay, the money's coming here, but what I'll do meantime? And that is one of the things that is really difficult of development.
It's like having a kid, of which I have 2. Once you release the game, and then you look back on it and it does well, and then you look back and you're like, well, those were some good times we had back then. And it's like, no, I don't remember why, but I was miserable for the last year. I can't quite put my finger on it, but it's like with kids, you forget like what that first month is like. You're like, let's have another one, it's easy. So that's kind of what games are. You think to yourself, oh, let's go make another one.
In a lot of ways, it's like sports. If you can get through to the end and you can win the championship, then everyone has that feeling of fiera, of victory at the end. So all that work that they put into, all that sacrifice they made is worth it. And the team we had was incredible. I mean, everyone really did sacrifice a lot at different points of the project. But it's low to go through that. You know, in the moment, you see people with the look on their face, they're in a valley of despair. Jake had it, and everyone else on the team with their own individual job. At some point, you have that, and that's a natural thing to go through, I think, on games, especially when you're trying to create something pretty ambitious.